We're here talking today with David Barton, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Highwire Networks and their Overwatch system, and wanted to give our agency partners in the insurance industry an idea of what is all about, what does the cyber landscape look like. So how are you, David?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to talk about, what I love, what my passion is, which is technology and cybersecurity and how we can help other people.
Well, you certainly have a long experience in the business, but just to get started, how have cyber threats changed in the last few years, and what changes are we likely to see in the next year or two that would affect independent insurance agents and their clients?
I'd like to say there's been something in the last few years that's been different than the last 10. And Tom, I'd like to tell your listeners that there's something new that's coming, and at the end of the day, I still think we're fighting some of the basic fights we've been fighting for 10 years, which is we have to be better at doing cyber hygiene, right? And cyber hygiene at the end of the day is patching systems, is not clicking on links, not opening files from people you don't know, because all of that's leading to the next big thing, which is monetization of ransomware, right? We've all seen the pipeline conversation in Texas, right? There's folks on the East Coast who were intimately impacted by gas prices and shortages and going to a gas station and not having gas at all. That's a direct outcome of someone or some people not doing basic cyber hygiene, right? The attack that hit them wasn't sophisticated. It was, leveraging some known problems, and they took advantage of it. And in the end, they got access and introduced ransomware into that environment. And that ransomware cost all of us.
So that begs the question, if an agency, and we talk to agents and saying, yeah, we change all our passwords, we promptly install patches, we don't store credit card numbers. Is that not enough? And why not? Why isn't it enough to do all those basic things?
So I would say it's probably not enough. It's a great start. Don't get me wrong. I love hearing when people say they have a focus on trying to do the right things. The challenge is, while they know parts of the right things to do, they don't know all of the right things to do. And cybersecurity is a discipline, right? There's a framework behind protecting what's important. And strong passwords is one of those components, right? Making your associates aware of security threats, that's part of that framework. Having antivirus and a strong endpoint agent that's doing more than just pattern matching, that's huge. But there's more to it than that, right? There's having a good firewall system that's blocking traffic or blocking attempts from countries where you don't do business, right? We call that geofencing. That's a great start. If you don't do business in Europe, block the whole continent from trying to come in through your firewall. That's just another layer or another part of that defense in depth idea. And so to your point, those approaches are great and in and of themselves are part of a larger program, right? It's like you've got insurance, but instead of having a whole comprehensive policy, you just have insurance for your trampoline, right? But now you got a house you got to protect, you got a car you got to protect, you got other things that you want to have insurance for. But if all you're doing is focusing on one component of risk, you're going to miss the big picture. Does that make sense?
And yeah, it does, David. But going beyond that, the agent needs to be thinking about the digital ecosystem that they live in, and that means, and the ecosystem that their policyholders live in, which is they're working with third-party vendors and they are accessing data from an agency, which may or not be controlled as strongly as it should be. So
Absolutely.
what's the risk? Could you go into a little bit more detail on that?
At the end of the day, there's a risk to protecting data, right? And in the insurance industry, you guys have a lot of sensitive data. And so not having control of that data when it leaves your environment is tough, right? I prefer to know where my data is going, when it's going, how it's going. And there has to be a level of trust between you and the upstream carrier or provider of that insurance policy, right? But how
Well,
do
not
you
just the carrier, but all the other vendors that an independent insurance agent uses,
That's right.
accounting software, lead generation software, that kind of thing.
That's right. So I think at the end of the day, if you practice good cyber hygiene and you have the separation of maybe my revenue side of my business versus my billing side or something, some mechanism to try to isolate or segment traffic and data types, right? Because if I can keep those systems that are providing third-party tools to me away from my core business where I'm generating revenue, then I reduce my risk. So that would be one approach. The other thing that you need to think about, and we're starting to see some of this. In fact, the White House talked about third-party risk and having compliance programming, holding suppliers accountable who want to do business with the DoD or with the government to certain security standards, right? I think as a independent agent or anybody who's doing and managing sensitive data, you want to hold your third parties to a standard as well. And so it's this whole, how do I know that the mom and pop shop down the street that I'm getting data from and tool sets from, that they're doing their due diligence? And that's tough, right? I mean, it really is tough because there's not enough people like me who think about the security implications of, let me go ahead and just store data in Dropbox, right? Or out in OneDrive or whatever. And what's the implication if somebody hacks into Box, right? Or Dropbox or some of these other places where you might be storing data to make things easier. All of that you just have to be thinking about. And maybe the best way, Tom, is to just encourage your associates and your agents to do online awareness once a month and make them smarter, or maybe not smarter, more educated on what the active threats are out there and be aware of them, right? So when they get that email, they don't click on that link.
One last question, David, and this is great. Uh, some agents, will have somebody on staff who is charged with IT responsibilities, maybe, and it might be part-time. And some others may have a local specialist who makes sure the systems are running. Is that really enough to make sure that the agency and the data they're protecting on behalf of their policyholders is truly protected?
So I don't know that it's enough in and of itself. For your agents who have that IT person who's doing part-time work, or they're outsourcing that, right? Make sure there's some language in their job duty that says you have to keep abreast of emerging threats. You have to take due diligence, due care around protecting the data. Much like a legal conversation, did you do the minimum needed so that you're not liable, right? And so I think the short answer is it depends. The longer answer is put that language in those contracts, right? Put that language in their job duties that say, stay up to date, go research, take the time to get more educated on cybersecurity threats so that you're better at protecting our data kind of approach.
Okay, it's saying to them, cybersecurity is now one of your responsibilities, and then you can judge whether or not they are up to the task to do that.
That's right. Right.
Okay.
And look, there are tons of support groups out there that they can participate in to learn from. There are, news groups where they can go research the latest threats to insurance or healthcare or finance or whatever they want to understand more about. And then there's organizations out there that can help them be the eyes and ears when they're not in the office, right? Because the one thing that I think a lot of folks don't really think about is at 2 a.m. when there's a bump in the night, who's responding, right? It's not your IT guy that's working half time. He'll come in at 8 or 9 or whatever, and maybe he'll notice it, maybe he won't. But there are organizations who do nothing but pay attention and respond on your behalf so that you can get a good night's sleep. And they'll tell you the next day, hey, last night, Tom, we saw this, but we blocked it. You're good.
Absolutely. This is great, David. I really appreciate this. And we'll continue these conversations in the future. We're providing a lot of information to our agency families. And for those of you listening, come back to our website to continue to look for new resources to learn more about cybersecurity and how to mitigate it.